So those are some of the ways that I think of motivating volunteers to be with us. Once we're giving a specific message to a potential volunteer, think of CMM's basic point of view that persons in conversation co-construct their realities. It's not just a matter of giving facts, it's being in conversation with the other and building that reality, that shared reality. Constructivism says we need to use person-centered messages. To get volunteers, this isn't a matter of sending out flyers or putting up notices on bulletin boards. We're going to have to talk to them. And finally, I would just say standpoint theory is just so on target for working with people who are in transition, like the folks that you're going to recommend others serve. That to realize that people on the margins of society, and these folks surely are, probably have a less false view of social reality. They know how the world works better than we do. That could be sold, you know, to college students or to perhaps to business people, that you don't have to get on a plane to learn a very different culture, and that these people can teach us as well as we have a message for them. Well, let's switch to how do you motivate the employers to hire the disadvantaged or the disabled. That's a toughie. And remember that this is not a course in psych we're talking about. This is a course in communication. A number of the things that I said before about person-centered messages, you know, not just peripheral cues, but the central route, etc., hold here, because you're just trying to motivate a different group. And your communication to volunteers is get involved. This is hire. And there's going to be a lot of resistance to persuasion. And again, I think of communication accommodation theory, which says the tendency will be to diverge rather than to converge, to let our communication be very different and show how different it is. We're not one of them. We're one of you. So I think it's important to recognize this and try and, through your person-centered messages, help converge. Social judgment theory has a whole lot to say about this kind of message, and I didn't mention it before, but it would for getting volunteers too. You have to figure out what the other person's, in this case the employer's, latitude of acceptance is. Would he or she be willing to hire just one person? And for what kind of job? What kind of job would do? Again, flyers or broad-based appeals aren't going to work. You've got to know what this employer does, the kind of job he might be looking for. He's not going to hire out of pity. He's got to have a legitimate job he has to do, and it's obviously going to be on the low end of the job skill on here. That's not always the case. Some of the people who may have been incarcerated before may have tremendous skills that would fit what they do. If they do, sell that. But notice you're really going to have to know your persons, both the disabled person and the employer, to make a match and to make a case. So knowing the latitude of acceptance is going to be crucial. Dietz would strongly say in his critical approach to communication theory that what he is saying is very much like CMM. He once told me that CMM, or that his theory is CMM with power. That CMM avoided talking about power, and he's talking about power. But he would say the workers need to have a voice and participation. Now, you aren't going to convince an employer to hire someone by saying, and you should listen to that guy or that woman and let them be in on the decision-making process. No, but to talk about their value as an employee and that they would have some value added given their life experience could be effective. The narrative paradigm suggests that everything is story almost, but it's good to be conscious that stories make a difference. And it would be great to tell story to the employer about people who have been involved and are working well. And the narrative paradigm says that people can tell a good story. They don't need to be rhetoricians or experts. And your employer can tell whether it's a good story or not, and think back, how? Does the story hang together? He knows the person's background or will. You should be frank about the person's background and show what they've accomplished. It's got to hang together. There can't be loose threads. And then it's got to be believable. It's got to ring true. And that may be hard for an employer. So you're going to have to tell story, and maybe you as a consultant are going to have to get to know the people that you're trying to help well enough so that your story does ring true and you aren't just talking about your own college experience or suburban lifestyle. Or finally, Jonathan asked me about speaking to what do the disabled need, or how can you support them? How can you find out what they need and help support them in this? Well, of course, CMM would say you've got to listen to them. I love what Barnett Pierce said, and I use it in my conflict mediation work all the time. I'm sure Jonathan has as well. That right at the start in the opening statement, I say, talk in a way that others want to listen, and listen in a way that others will want to talk. And I think it's very important that we listen to what the disadvantaged have to say. They are on the margins of society. They probably know how the system works better than we do. I once worked in a low-income housing project, and my thought was, I'm going to acquaint people with the law and help them know how they can, what benefits can come to them. And very quickly I found out they knew it a whole lot better than I did, just from talking to each other. So listening to those people can be very helpful.